Today, I decided to take a short detour to see one of the Southwest's most mysterious pictographs, a flute-playing figure with a long tail, a black moth, and a white rabbit. I wanted to share this particular panel with you because it's a great example of how little things that appear to be random and meaningless can suddenly come alive if you start paying closer attention. This is Kokopelli, a symbol that spans thousands of miles and multiple Native American cultures in the Southwest. Take a moment to look closer, and right away we can notice there's some unusual things about this particular Kokopelli. First of all, it's been stabilized with a cable, but what I really wanted to point out is that he appears to have a bird sitting on his head. That's not totally unique, but it is unusual. Second, there appears to be a seed pod from the Datura plant, known to have been used in ceremonies for its hallucinogenic properties. An interesting thing about Datura is that it blooms at night. So you'll see the flowers, white showy flowers, blooming in the morning in the summer all over the Southwest. And because it blooms at night, it's also known as the moonflower. We'll come back to that in just a moment when we get to the white rabbit. And third, this particular Kokopelli appears to be sitting on a long animal-like tail with a tuft of fur at the end. Now, I don't know if that's unique or not, but I've seen a lot of Kokopelli images, and I don't recall having ever seen one with a tail before. Animal-human hybrid images and the Datura seeds are both indicative of ceremonial activity. I wanted to point all that out before moving on to the rest of the panel over here to the left. And as we do, I want to note that the flute player is pointed in this direction, which, for the record, happens to be south. What strikes you first over here is this large figure, which I think is either a moth or a butterfly. That shape appears again as a tiny figure down here by the white rabbit. In between the big moth and the smaller one is this human figure, almost skeletal, with hands that seem to be reaching up through some sort of confusion or smoke. This is interesting for a couple of reasons. First, just down the road from this panel is another pictograph showing a pair of hands with what appears to be a dead person off to one side. Now, handprints are pretty common in Southwest rock art, but hands like these are unique to my knowledge. I can think of two things that might be going on here, and both are inspired by the presence of the black moth. In the American Southwest, the black witch moth appears in diverse cultural folklore, known as the butterfly of death. It is either a harbinger of death, a messenger from the spirit world, or a deceased relative returning from beyond to say goodbye. So the black moth combined with waving hands could represent a transition between the living and the dead, or communication with the spirit world across a veil. Another possible interpretation comes from Southwestern cosmology, where life itself began with emergence. People and beings rose from previous worlds into this one, moving upward through the earth into light. That journey from darkness into illumination is the essence of human experience. The black moth does not conquer the darkness, it navigates it. It does not create light, it seeks it. It moves between the two realms without fully belonging to either. So a black moth especially carries this feeling of threshold and moving between two different worlds. So the combination of the black moth and the hands reaching up could be a representation from the creation story. It's important to note that black is not evil in these traditions as a color. It's the color of north in many Pueblo directional systems, the color of fertile soil after rain, of the deep sky before stars appear. It's the color of potential, of that which has not yet revealed itself. When a moth lifts from shadow and circles a flame, it performs a small ceremony of crossing. It approaches illumination, risks transformation, and is altered by the encounter. Rock art panels, including this one, are often placed along travel corridors near water or at the base of cliffs where echoes gather. They're liminal places. A moth-like image in such a setting might speak of movement between seen and unseen worlds, of messages carried at night when ordinary noises quiet down. Among Pueblo people, balance between day and night, summer and winter, seen and unseen, is essential. Harmony requires an awareness of forces that are always present but not always visible. Painting a night-flying creature on stone suggests attentiveness to these types of subtle forces. The moth does not announce itself loudly like an eagle or a bear. Instead, it asks the viewer to look carefully, to notice what flutters at the edge of our perception. If you encountered such an image, especially one rendered in dark pigments on pale rock, you might consider that it marks a story about a spiritual transformation that took place at night. As a carved figure, it can become a quiet teacher, suggesting that transformation is rarely loud or dramatic. It happens in twilight hours, in fragile bodies, in small crossings between worlds. And the rock, holding that image for centuries, becomes both witness and messenger, carrying forward the memory of that passage long after the wings themselves have turned to dust. The other interesting thing about this particular panel are all the small things down here at the bottom. For example, that tiny white rabbit, and next to it, another black moth. This smaller one almost seems to be hiding behind a plant of some sort, perhaps corn. What possible associations could the rabbit have with all of this, other than the fact that rabbits eat corn? Well, it turns out that many Native American cultures have stories about the shapes seen in the moon. While many cultures around the world see a man in the moon, many Native American cultures see a white rabbit, often called the moon rabbit. Versions of this rabbit in the moon story appear in different traditions all across North America, especially among tribes of the West and Southwest. For example, it is told that long ago, when the world was still young, the animals could speak and the sky was closer to the earth. Among the animals lived a small white rabbit. Though he was not big like the bear or swift like the deer, he had a gentle heart and great kindness. One winter, a wary traveler came walking through the forest. He was cold and hungry. The animals each offered something. Squirrel brought nuts. Beaver brought bark. But White Rabbit had stored no food. He felt ashamed that he had nothing to give. "I have only myself," said the rabbit. So he built a small fire and told the traveler, "You may eat me so that you will not starve." But the traveler was no ordinary man. He was a powerful spirit being, walking the earth in disguise to test the hearts of the animals. When Rabbit leapt forward toward the fire, the spirit caught him gently and said, "Your gift is the greatest of all, for you offered your own life." To honor Rabbit's unselfish heart, the spirit lifted him high into the sky and placed him in the face of the moon, so the people would always remember what true generosity looks like. If the rabbit is associated with the moon, and the moth is associated with the night, then this panel may not simply show animals drawn at random. It may show a world that comes alive after dark, a world of transformation, of movement between shadow and light. While there's no direct written record explaining this panel, moths are nocturnal creatures drawn to light, and in many cultures they symbolize transformation and movement between darkness and illumination. Combined with the lunar rabbit and the flute-playing figure, the imagery of this panel suggests themes of night, transition, and altered states of consciousness. Some scholars suggest that unusual combinations of human and animal forms, like the human flute player with the long animal tail and the bird on his head, could represent visions or spiritual experiences encountered during ritual or altered states of consciousness. Could this be a literal vision, a teaching myth, an ancestral story? The short answer is we can never know for sure. Most rock art panels consist of images that were created individually over many years, and so they don't lend themselves to this sort of interpretation. But that mystery is exactly what draws us to these places, an ancient dialogue between humans and the landscape. This particular panel definitely feels intentional, like it was all done at once and meant to be part of a bigger story about life, land, spirit, and community. Ancient art like this doesn't give us a clear answer. Instead, it asks a question. What did these figures mean to the people who painted them? What story were they trying to tell? If you're ready to get out and start exploring, the GPS location of the panel shown in this video is included in the Wanderer's Guide to Northwest Colorado. So, thanks for watching. As always, have fun out there, be safe, and leave it exactly as you found it by taking only photos and leaving only footprints. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you get notified every time I release a new video. Until next time, happy trails, and I hope to see you out there.